Acceptance. Diversity is acceptance.
Diversity is life.
Diversity is understanding.
Diversity is priceless.
Acceptance.
All people working together.
Infinite.
Unity. Most definitely unity.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Uncomfortable Conversations that Ignite Change. This year, the dialogue continues. My name is Joanna Deshay, and I have the great pleasure of serving as Executive Director of Diversity Leadership Alliance. We are kind of halfway through the year, and we've had the opportunity to bring you some very important diversity, equity, and inclusion, and even social justice topics all around in our Uncomfortable series, and it has been amazing, and you will not be disappointed by today's topic and or conversation. These dialogues were designed as a community space, a place where all of its members could listen and learn, and each of our webinars is really meant to be a place where you can ask questions and have meaningful, open, and honest conversations that end up being turning points and actionable items that ignite change. So we are really happy that you are all here. Our sole desire is for people to walk away transformed and feeling like they have some additional tools that they can use to begin to ask important questions that really get to the root of the insidious nature of racism and inequity across various systems. By having these meaningful dialogues with our corporate, community, and nonprofit members, we really hope to eliminate some of the racist thoughts, racist behaviors, and actions, and really encourage our community, all of you, to be advocates and social justice champions for all. So let us begin.
My name is Rose. I'm a transgender girl. I was born a boy, but I always knew that I was a girl.
My name is Devon. I'm a trans male. That means I was born female, and I live now as a male. When I was 3, I decided that I was going to grow up and be a father and marry Janet Jackson.
She would write letters to Santa Claus, to the Tooth Fairy. When would I be turned into a girl? Could you turn me into a girl?
I'm Jay. I'm a non-binary trans person. That means that I'm not a man, nor am I a woman. I was raised as a girl, but when I learned about non-binary gender identities, it was like a whole new world had opened up for me.
My name is Ronnie, and my sister Ellie is transgender.
Ellie told us on her 4th birthday that she was a girl in her heart and her brain. And I said, "You're my favorite princess boy." And what did you say, Ellie?
No, I'm a princess girl.
My struggling point was this had to be a phase.
The reality is acceptance takes a while.
I was terrified of coming out. I was afraid of losing friends, family, loved ones. I was afraid of this discrimination and potential violence I could face.
I was so terrified that I wanted to die. Got threatening letters. One of the quotes said, do us a favor, Paula, and put that gun back up to your head and finish the job.
I'm scared as a dad for her safety, whether a society will be as accepting as her family and her friends are.
I feel embarrassed and unsafe when people out me to other people.
If there isn't a gender-neutral bathroom available, when there are only men's and women's bathrooms, I have to make a decision about how I look that day and whether there's more risk for me going into the men's room or the women's room.
I was chased by 4 people in the metro for being transgender.
I have been denied health care. I have been gawked at. I've been humiliated. I have been physically assaulted several times when using a bathroom.
Seeing her face the first time we let her wear a dress outside of the house, pretty special.
You're different, that's okay. Just keep on being yourself.
Support means listening. Maybe not understanding, but just listening and being there for me.
Pushing back on jokes or offensive comments at the expense of transgender people.
The easiest way to support transgender people is to follow their lead.
Supporting transgender people means letting them be who they are.
I'm proud to be trans because I want to be myself.
I'm proud to be trans because I think life is too short to be anything besides what you are. This is who I am.
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 That was powerful and just a tip of the iceberg for the conversation that we are going to be on today, because it is such a vitally important one. And I am just so pleased that the panelists are willing to share and be open in today's dialogue. This dialogue is actually the 8th dialogue in our Uncomfortable Conversation series, and it will cast a much needed light on transgender inclusion in the workplace. In this webinar, we're going to really focus on what does it mean to accept everyone? What does it mean to accept all gender identities? And even more than that, how can we foster a true sense of belonging in the workplace? So I'm really excited for the conversation and for you to meet these amazing individuals that are going to share with us today. Before we begin, I just want to remind everyone that Diversity Leadership Alliance is a community education and we're a nonprofit. And we want to always ensure that our program and events are inviting and respectful and accessible to all. Before we get started though, I just want to remind you of our community space rules of engagement. Very quickly, make sure you are listening actively and be open to the full spectrum of perspectives. Commit to have greater empathy. Try to relinquish, absolutely let go of the need to be right. Ask questions, seek clarification for understanding, be respectful. I cannot stress that enough. If we just had that in the world, we would be so much further. No one or two individuals should dominate the discussion area, the chat area, so just be respectful and give others an opportunity to also engage. Approach each other with kindness and love. And as a community space, I just want to remind everyone, we reserve the right to remove you from the discussion if you are being disrespectful or disruptive, because we want everyone to feel like they can have a safe conversation in a safe space. And lastly, ask questions. Ask questions of myself, ask questions of the panelists, ask questions of each other. That is the only way we are truly going to learn. So I definitely want to make sure we put that up, and Brent will put that up as we continue going through the program. So Brent, is your mic available to talk about our wonderful ASL translation we have? He might be having some technical difficulties, so I will just continue on our program. We do have ASL translation this morning. You can see our wonderful Heather there, our first translator from Equal Access Services. We've got Mike Rose and Heather Ivy signing us for today, so thank you very much to both of you. And a very special thank you to Dave Wallenhop. He and his amazing team have really been supportive. Dave, we are grateful. We are thankful for you allowing us to make this an inclusive opportunity for all. And we just strive every day as an organization to get closer to that. So we are coming up on our big annual conference. I'm so excited about that. And I think Reed is on one of our conference chairs that will give us some additional information about this year's conference. So if Reed is on, I would love for him to just share some information on conference. Reed?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for letting me join. I'm out in the field today with a little unstable internet, so I'm going to stay off video. Great to see you, and what an important dialogue we're having today. In fact, these spaces are so important. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my co-chair, Tiki Carmichael from USAA, and we want to invite everybody to attend this year's DLA conference, where this uncomfortable conversation will continue in a dedicated space over a 2-day hybrid venue. We'll have virtual panels, virtual workshops, and just a dedicated space to dive deeper and deeper into these conversations that ignite change. We also have an annual awards ceremony. This includes nominees from the corporate and nonprofit space, as well as individual leaders. So I would encourage everyone on this call to think of someone you know that is a champion for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Take that action and nominate them so we can recognize leaders and continue building a change throughout the community. And recognition, I believe, is a big part of that. If you want to register, which you all should, please go to diversityleadershipalliance.org. Tiki and myself are happy to answer any questions that you may have about the conference. Obviously, Joanna is a big part of that as well. And if you have specific questions about awards, our dear friend Brent is a big part of the awards process and the chair of that committee. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Again, please register. Tickets are on sale today, and this is a dedicated space to continue these vital conversations in our community.
Despite growing public knowledge and awareness of transgender individuals, many still face stigma, hostility, and discrimination in the workplace. Some employers are not equipped with the supportive culture or politics designed to protect and support their trans employees, leading to issues with retention and overall job satisfaction. In this eye-opening, candid discussion, attendees will hear individual accounts of what it is like to navigate a workplace as a trans individual, while remaining authentic and expressing your true gender identity. So in today's webinar, attendees will walk away with a better understanding of how to exhibit empathy and acceptance for those in our trans community. You will also leave with important tools for how to advocate and become allies for the trans community, helping to promote and cultivate a more trans-inclusive workplace that is open, honest, and accepting of all gender identities. I would now like to introduce you to our 4 dynamic panelists who will be guiding us through today's conversation. Okay. Julian Melson. Julian Melson is a central sterile core technician. He has worked with Mayo Clinic, Arizona for over 10 years, an advocate for the LGBTQIA+ community. Melson has integrated his advocacy work with Mayo Clinic's commitment to promoting diversity and inclusion. He was co-chair of the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Intersex Mayo Employee Resource Group, also known as LGBTI Merge, from 2012 to 2014, and has worked diligently with Mayo Clinic on transgender employee and patient education and advocacy for transgender healthcare benefits. Julian is a community activist and is the co-founder of the Arizona Trans Youth Parent Organization, and volunteered with organizations such as 1 in 10. Through his unwavering activism, Julian has been recognized and received several awards, including the Phoenix Pride John Burkham Shaw Community Service Award, the 2013 Mayo Clinic Diversity Inclusion Award, and Echo Magazine's 2013 Man of the Year. Now I'd like to introduce Cassandra Williamson. Cassandra is a post-op transgender woman who is also a parent of 4 and a grandparent of 8. She is a veteran of the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Marine Corps. Thank you for your service. As well as graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. As a research assistant with the Higher Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity Health Lab at the University of Alabama, she gets to participate in important initiatives that helps to improve the lives of LGBTQ+ people in the state of Alabama, and hopefully helping to make things better for our transgender veterans. Cassandra is also a member of the VA's Transgender Engagement Group to make surgical care for transgender veterans a reality. Thank you for being with us here today, Cassandra. Give me just one second. Okay. Now I would like to introduce Jay Wilkinson. Jay is a creative artist and transgender model, female to male. He made the bold move to New York City from Arizona last year during a stressful and uncertain time with the pandemic in full swing after graduating with his bachelor's degree in fashion design from the Art Institute. He has only ever dreamed of being a part of the world of fashion and moving to the big city, and was his bold step to making that dream a reality. He was received with open arms here in New York and has been honored to walk in New York's Fashion Week, as well as be part of the Fashion Week Brooklyn as the LGBTQ+ creative lead. As a transgender advocate in the fashion industry, Jay aims to change the stigma of being trans and set a positive tone that you can be who you are genuinely and still follow your passion wherever it may lead you. He believes that the world deserves to see your full, authentic self and is glad that he gets to finally find comfort in his own skin. Jay is a firm believer that queer representation in fashion and the creative art is important and can change the way that transgender models are represented and included. All right, welcome, Jay. And we're going to go back over here. So I'd now like to welcome Teresa Campos Nelson. Teresa is a surgery technician at Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, Arizona. She's a trans-inclusive ally that was married to a trans man for 13 years as they walked through his transition journey together. Through what she calls a beautiful experience, Teresa has become an avid advocate for all human rights. She is a member of the Mayo Employee Resource Group, MERG, LGBTI MERG, and is always willing to participate in pivotal educational conversations such as today's webinar. Distinguished guests, a warm welcome and gracious virtual DLA welcome to our panelists, Julian Melson, Cassandra Williamson, Jay Wilkinson, and Teresa Campos Nelson. All right. Good morning, everybody, and thank you. For all of our participants, I see that someone has raised their hand, and we do not take questions through that right now. We will be doing questions all through our Q&A, please. And please bear with me this morning since I have lost my co-host, Joanna Deshay. I usually handle the background, and I am now up front doing both. So please bear with me if I go through a couple of things here and there. But welcome, everybody. And Reed, if you could do me a favor, please, and just text Joanna. I can't do that right now, that we're going full steam ahead. I would appreciate it. All right,
No
everybody.
problem.
Thank you, sir, very much. Okay. So as we get started, we did just do a really quick introduction, but we would like for each of you to please tell us a little bit about yourself and just share your story just a little bit. And we will start with Cassandra.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. I appreciate it. as most can tell, for me personally, the voice can be a little bit confusing. If I turn off my camera, you would have some questions right now about with whom you're speaking. That's natural. I understand that. I get it on the phone all the time, by the way. If I make a phone call to someone, they'll go, "Yes, sir, can I help you?" And I'm going, "I'm not that. You just can't tell." So anyway, I knew when I was about 4 or 5 years old that something was horribly wrong. I didn't know what the word transgender was. I didn't even know the word existed. Obviously, I didn't know for a long time. I'm 62 years old at this point in my life, and I'm a really young 62. I've got some markers that I kind of go by. Might be 62 years old, but post-op in 2018. So yeah, I'm 4, 3 as well. So yeah, so I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, a home of Hatfield-McCoy feud country. And if you're familiar with that area, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's where I grew up, 15 miles from where the two clans fought each other over a pig and a girl. That's where I'm from. So originally. Now I live though in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and some say I went from the frying pan and jumped right into the fire. But in the interim, I've been in the military and all over the place, and owned numerous businesses, and been an entrepreneur in all kinds of different industries. From construction, I did that after I got out of the military, and went into restaurants. I had 3 restaurants at one time, and I'll tell you a story about that in a minute too. But the transition part of this, like I said, I've always known that something was there. I got married after the military, after the Naval Academy, went into the Marine Corps. I knew back then too, by the way, I knew what was going on then. So it was a really tough time for me, trying to be hidden and not live my true self. So it was a challenge. I even went the route of going to some really charismatic apostolic churches, trying to cast the woman out that I knew I was. that didn't work. It was never going to work. So I actually tried all kinds of things. You go hyper masculine in the Marine Corps, trying to do it that way, and tried all kinds of ways to destroy who I really am. But that's never going to work. And I tried that. It just cannot. It can't work, won't do it. So I had to let this person out. But the way I got here, though, is kind of really interesting. Let's see, I divorced in 2000. And by the way, my ex-wife happens to be, we have 4 children, as you know in the intro, 4 children and 8 grandchildren now. And my ex-wife and I are best friends in the world. We've been in business together since divorce. We've done all these kind of things together. She and I are the best friends. And, I count friends on one hand. She's the first one. She's the main one. Okay, I turn to. And I'll tell you some stories about that in a minute, more about that. But so we got divorced in 2000. And then somewhere along the line in early 2002, somewhere around there, I came across this little tube of estrogen, conjugated estrogen, Premarin, I guess that's how you pronounce it, I'm not sure. But on the back, it had a warning label. And that warning label said, men should avoid contact with this because it could cause breast development. I'd never been so shocked in my life. I'll tell you that. I think I probably hit the floor because I knew that I am who I am, but I didn't know that you could do it. That was the eye-opening experience. That was the event that said, you can do this, you can be you. So I started that process. I started learning, and I spent 7 years from 2002 to 2009 studying and reviewing literature I could find and never telling anyone about it. I did all this in secret. No one knew except, well, there was one friend in high school who knew, but she killed herself shortly out of high school. She was a really dear friend. She knew, but so it was an eye-opening experience to be able to start studying and realize that you can get here, you can do this, you can be yourself finally, really. So in that 7-year period, I learned a lot. 2009, though, still was not in a place where I could tell anyone about me. I didn't know anyone like me. I thought I was the only one in the world. Really did. I thought I was the only one in the world. So then I started ordering. In 2009, I started ordering birth control pills from overseas. I ordered them by the hundreds of dollars at a whack. Okay. So I would buy them, ship them in. I was also buying what was called phytoestrogens, or plant-based estrogen compounds, and herbs. And I'm telling you, I had so many of those things in my house. Oh my God, it was like I would bake off the soy just so I could get the stuff in the bottom, all the chemicals I needed. I was doing it all out. And then I'd get scared and flush it all down the toilet. So I don't know how to do this. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know. And then a couple months later, I'd order it all back again and start over. And that went on for several years of going through getting, ordering stuff from overseas, and getting the plant-based estrogen compounds like soy and fenugreek and different ones. They were all really high in estrogen content. But the problem with those herb-based ones is you've got to take so much of it. They can really, you have to do a lot. So, but I was doing them all in tandem though. But I'd go down the road. At the time I was a contractor, and so I'd go out on jobs, and in between jobs I'd have to drive. So I would go into the women's section of a store at one end of the trip, buy up all the women's clothes and get into my truck, and roll the windows up with the tent on them, change clothes, drive for 200 or 300 miles, and then get out of the truck and change and throw it all in the trash. And start it all over again on the way back. No one knew. But it made me sick though. It put me in the hospital in 2015, I think, or 2014 or something like that. And it was an attempt at suicide. So I didn't tell anyone that because I didn't know how to tell anyone. Here I am. I had breast development going on. I was trying to hide. My family didn't know. My ex didn't know. My children didn't know. Nothing. No one knew. But it put me in the hospital. I was in ICU for 10 days as a result of all those combinations of things and different things that were going on at the time. And one funny thing that happened though, the surgeon came in at one time and said, "We're going to have to do a lung biopsy on you." And I'm going, "Oh my God. Oh my God." A lung biopsy, doc? So anyway, I ended up, they did it. And then the doctor asked me, and my ex-wife was sitting on the windowsill. I remember it so clear. She was sitting on the windowsill. The doctor came in and said, "Hey, are you on any kind of steroids?" And I lied. And I said, "No." And he let it go. 6 months later, I was in the hospital again, and then made a more serious attempt a few months later after that. So I didn't know how to transition. Didn't know what to do. So I had to reach out for help. That last attempt was in Missouri in one of my restaurants. And I had decided that I couldn't deal with it anymore. I didn't know how to tell family or anybody. It was either live or die. I was at that point. So I reached out. I mean, that day after I had attempted that last one, I reached out for help. And the doctor said, "You need to come in and talk to me about this." So the next day I was in her office, and she said, "You need to write all this stuff out and come back in a week." Well, I wrote it out. I did. And I also gave a copy to my kids, to my ex-wife, to all of my employees, and notified the local newspaper. Now, why did I notify the local newspaper? Because I had 3 restaurants here. I'm a local restaurateur. I was in the Chamber of Commerce. I was the vice chairperson for the Historic Preservation Committee in the town. And that's ironic in and of itself. So I was expecting a story somewhere back on page 19 in the local newspaper. And no. I ended up on the front page. Right, front page, the half-mast, the whole, here I am, Cassandra Williamson, transitioning local restaurateur. Right. Well, I got some interesting comments off of that one. The letters to the editor and the Bible Melt of Missouri. There were several letters coming in, and one of them said, "You're just a senior citizen in a training bra." And I'm going, really? I had so much fun with that. But I do remember, though, one of the biggest challenges I had, and that was going in public. 1 month here I am dressed as a professional male, going to Chamber of Commerce meetings and meetings with City Council on historic preservation, giving talks. Next month, I went all out. I'd gotten rid of everything, just gone. Mini skirt, low cut top. I was out there with it. Oh my God. But they were good about it, though. They really were really good about it. I remember at the Chamber of Commerce, I'll tell you one story, and I'll come more forward a little bit. I'll tell you one story, though. Back in 2016, Chamber of Commerce was getting ready, and don't take this as any kind of political thing at all. I'm not going there with this, but it is still funny. All right. It is funny. So, you know who was running and all that stuff in 2016. So here we go. The local Chamber of Commerce always welcomes new businesses to town. And one of the new businesses was the local Republican Party. I knew these people. I'd been to dinner with them. They'd been in my restaurants. They all know me. All right. They all know who I am. But they were sitting at a table in the Chamber of Commerce, and they said, "Who wants to be the one to go welcome the Republican Party of Johnson County into our city?" And I go, "That is me." And they said, "Oh, we want to be a fly on the wall for that one." So I did welcome them in, and it was fun. They all were shocked. I walk into their new office space and I go, "Hi, my name's Cassandra Williamson, and I am here to welcome you to the beautiful town of Warrensburg, Missouri." I know you, I know you, I know you. So anyway, that's where that all was at. But today, let's bring it up to where I am today. Now, I came back to Missouri. Those businesses failed because people stopped coming. When it hit the newspaper 6 months later, they didn't survive. People just stopped visiting my restaurants. They didn't want to be there. Didn't want to be around me. Now, but the upside to that is that the people in that town, there's only a population of 20,000. The Air Force Base was 10 miles away, Wyben Air Force Base. So the population of the town and population of the Air Force Base, there were people in that community who had transgender children. They didn't know anyone to talk to. When my name hit the front page of the local newspaper, I had people coming into the restaurants telling me, "I am so glad that you are here. I'm so glad that you are out and open with who you are. I'm so glad you're doing this because I need somebody to talk to, and my daughter or son, my trans daughter, trans son, we need to have somebody who can represent us too, and show that they can still be successful in this world and live in it." And to this day, those people are my friends, people I can turn to and say, "Hey, how is everything going? Is everything going well with you and your children and all this?" And that's awesome. That's why I am so out and open with being who I am all the time, everywhere I go. Now, don't get me wrong, it's dangerous. I've been threatened.
Right.
Many of us here can say that. Right. There was a person who told me one time that if I ever find you, now somebody connected on social media, and they said, "If I ever find you, I will cut your head off and drag your body through the streets." Right.
Sandra, this is Joanna. I'm back, by the way. I don't know if you see me on the screen, but I have to tell you something, and I apologize for interrupting your story, and I apologize for dropping off, you all. It is not a Zoom webinar until you have technical issues. So
True.
It's all good. But Cassandra, I want to tell you something. First of all, and I want to bring in a couple of other people so we have time to kind of tell everyone's story, but I want to tell you something in that for everybody that's on the call here, for all of our panelists, threatening a human life is not okay. No. I don't care what your issue is. I don't care how you're feeling. I don't care what fear has been instilled in your mind, your heart, your space. Threatening to harm a human being is not okay. And that's the space as an ally that I stand in. I think for Teresa also, that's the space that we stand in. If we were more sensitive, aware, empathetic, that there's just no place for it, and we stood as allies and co-conspirators, people would not be able to say things. I mean, a human life has value across the board. I don't care what color, what gender, what religion, it doesn't matter, right? And I think when we honor that, that's the problem. We don't honor lives, and that, you just saying that, it's breaking my heart that someone feels like they have a right? That somehow they have a right to take someone's life. And that, just so for everyone on here, that's something that, all of us in marginalized communities feel from time to time, when our lives are threatened, and it's not okay. I do want you to continue your story, but I'd like to bring in Jay, because I'm going to kind of break the story up a little bit so that we can get to different parts of the question. So I want you to hold on to that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, actually, Jay, I'll go to you last. I'll go to Teresa and Julian. Our wonderful medical, very official looking folks in there. Sorry again for dropping off, but yes, I love it. I've known Julian for some time, and we've had the great pleasure of really working together, and it's so great to be able to moderate this. But I want to bring in now Teresa and Julian Melson, and I want to just talk about continuing this story. If you could add on to what Cassandra has been talking about, thank you, Cassandra, and share your story as well. And just kind of bring it up to speed, and then we'll bring in Jay to kind of wrap us up, and I'd like to move on to the next question. So Julian and Teresa, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us here. My story in a nutshell is really hard. I'm a very old man, and so it could take the whole rest of the day. But basically, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
I was raised here in Arizona with a single mom and two amazing grandparents, her parents. I grew up in a liberal, loving home. I was told I was loved every day, and I felt that. I thought everyone had this, but I was never shamed for the way I expressed myself. I was given positive, powerful messages about what my future could be like, and I was allowed to express myself in whatever way I wanted. Things changed for me when puberty came, and suddenly my body was lying about who I was. I didn't have any word transgender. I didn't have any mentors. So this issue, this thing that I carried around with me was just tied in with a lot of shame, embarrassment. By the time I got to 39 and started my transition, I had a lot of undoing of self-hate. And in doing that, I discovered empathy, that when I can give another person space, I can have a connection with them. And I actually learned, I started doing presentations at my first year of transition. And the beauty of doing that is all I did was tell my story. And in making myself vulnerable, people would share their pain with me afterwards. So not only did I present myself as who I am, and I at least hope diminished the old story about who I was. We never got to tell people who we were, and we lived with a story about us that was awful, and for most of us didn't fit at all, but we were too afraid to show ourselves. Right. So I am 55 years old. I transitioned, oh gosh, 16 years ago, and I won't shut up now. That little kid in me who was 10, who I had made shut up and never tell anyone who I was, he comes out to play all the time now. So I just want to reiterate what Joanna said, that you can ask any question of myself, and I'll let Teresa say that for herself. But there is nothing taboo, nothing off limits. I am completely comfortable and sure of who I am, and that will never change by somebody's question. So please don't be embarrassed. I understand not getting this, or I would have transitioned much sooner. I had a lot of misconceptions. So if you say anything like that, I get it. I get you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julian. Welcome. Teresa.
Thank you. Cassandra, I want to tell you that your story gave me goosebumps, and I want to congratulate you, and I admire your courage, and I appreciate that you have a sense of humor, and thank you for being who you are. I was like so touched by your story. It almost brought tears to my eyes. I was like, oh my God, we're on camera. You got to keep it together. So thank you so much. And I actually witnessed so much of that coming through with Julian. My story is that Julian and I got together as a lesbian couple, and I fell head over heels in love with him, so much that he could have come to me with anything and I would have said, okay. I loved him so much. And a few months into it, he came to me and he said, I am transgender and I have to transition. And if I don't do this, I don't know that I can continue to live. And he gave me an out by saying, I understand if you're not on board with this, but I have to do this. And he said that so that I could say to him that, well, this is not what I was expecting to be. And he was giving me that opportunity. And the first words out of my mouth was, let's find a support group. There's no way that I was going to not be with him. And Phoenix did not have a support group for trans men at the time. So we drove down to Tucson once a month to attend a trans male meeting. Now there were trans women meetings here, and those ladies were so kind and helped us so much. They took us under their wing, and they just really they were very much a support system for us. But at some point we did feel like he needed a trans male community. And since then he started a trans male support group here in Phoenix that's still going. So that was very important for us. But anyway, I got to walk through this beautiful transition with him. And I just opened my eyes, and it was such an incredible experience. And I am so grateful to have gotten to be a part of it. We were married and together 13 years. And just like you, Cassandra, we are no longer married, but absolutely each other's best friends. And support will never not be there. And the boyfriend that I'm seeing now, I said to him, my ex-husband is my absolute best friend. And, you've got to be on board with that, because I couldn't imagine not having Julian in my life. So we work together. We see each other every day. I go over to his house to work out because he's got a gym in his living room.
Awesome.
Anytime we have the opportunity to present and participate in events like this, I am 100% on board with that. Mayo Clinic is a very LGBT friendly place to work. We attend, we set up a booth at Gay Pride every year, and I get to volunteer. And they just started this campaign with the pronouns. So these are new. And so anyway, I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for having us. And also, any question, a lot of people at work, when they discovered he was trans and maybe felt uncomfortable asking him questions. And I'm very open and outgoing and friendly as a person. And so people felt very comfortable asking me, and it was all about education for me, and 100% let people feel very comfortable in asking me any question that they wanted to. And then they felt more comfortable with him. So I get to be that ally. And
that's wonderful.
I think this speaks volumes about what one individual can do to make a workplace a safe, comfortable environment. I had that when I started. I didn't know what I was walking into. I was pretty comfortable with myself, but you never know. And I had a coworker state openly that he would take up arms for the protection of LGBT rights. He was a straight, white, cis man. And in my entire life, I'd never heard a man like that publicly say something in defense of us, because there was risk he might be gay. And it really made it, he set a tone in that department that we are inclusive just by saying what he felt. That's it. It's super simple. Show support. If you want to know what to do, let people know you like me. Let them know you. You
I
know,
love that. I love that, Julian. And
I'm not that story.
that is what right there, this is what it's all about. You know, I always tell people go, oh, so you're an ally. I'm like, no, I'm not this passive stand on the corner girl. That's not me. I am a co-conspirator. I will fight for you. That is a difference, right? I'm going to, you talk about, this cis male. I am that. And people always say that same thing to me, Julian. Aren't you worried that people are going to think that? I'm like, they're going to think it anyway. I do not care, and that is really important because we get very hung up, and it's a scary place, right? It's a scary place for people to, impart their own thoughts about who you are. But anybody that knows me knows that I am an advocate for human rights. I think that, we have two sides that we stand on in this fight. You are either on the side of justice, right? That says you cannot do this to individuals, or you're on the side of injustice, right? And you stand idly by, even if you're quiet, right? To say, oh, I don't see that, it's not harming me. I have nothing to do with it. So I say justice or injustice, pick your side, pick a side, and so that's why I'm so passionate about us just getting to the point where we can stand up for each other always, even when they're not in the room, because I want folks to do that for me. When Joanna's not at the table, I want you to say, hey, question, right? Why are there no other people of color in here? That's a problem. I want someone to pick up, that fight for me, because with a lot of us that are in these marginalized communities, sometimes the load is heavy, man. And it's really nice to know that someone can help hold up your part of the sky. So I am so pleased that you are both here. And let's wrap up this first part of telling stories. And I thought this was important because while we read people's bio, right, and you hear who they are on paper, what you don't get to hear is what's in their heart. This is why I thought we would open this up this way. So last but certainly not least is someone who has a part of my heart, because I got a chance to really watch him grow, watch him flourish. And I stood hopefully in a space as a co-conspirator for Jay as he was trying to discover, who he was. And so Jay is joining us from New York City, and he is a transgender model there, a friend and someone I hold very dear to me. So Jay, welcome, and please share your story if you would.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I just kind of want to tie in with Julian. I have a similar story with him. I grew up, my mom was a single mother. My grandparents raised me. I was raised and born in Roswell, New Mexico. I moved to Kentucky in a little town, not much diversity. Culture was very narrowed down. As a creative, I knew that I needed to explore and identify myself. And during that time, this was about 12, 14 years ago, I needed to identify who I was, being a young teenager. So I was lesbian during the time. So I decided to venture off back to the West Coast and attend school in Arizona. That's when I met Deshae. I wanted to major in fashion marketing. I graduated in 2018 and I started testosterone 2017. So I only been on testosterone for about 5 years now. And it's been wild, it's been dangerous, it's been rough, it's been awesome all at the same time. I knew graduating in 2018, I had hit hard, like rock bottom. The school was shutting down. I was working a full-time job. I just opened up to my mom about being transgender. I was going through breakups, mess ups. There was just a lot going on. So I just had to hang on and push, and I had my supporters with me. So I took a year off and decided to just, take the leap of faith. Last year, I just decided to move here to New York City. Another rough time in my life. I traveled here during the pandemic, literally quarantine. I was like the only one traveling here by car. There was no set job. I had very little money in my pocket. But being here had opened my eyes so much of who I am, because growing up, I was always disguising myself as this little girl and not necessarily who I wanted to be. So like Julian said, I felt vulnerable. I felt like other people's feelings came first, my friends and family. So mine was just kind of kicked underneath the rug. So as in last year, you had Black Lives Matter, Trans Lives Matter. And I knew being diverse, being Black and Hispanic and transgender, I knew this was my purpose to set a tone. So I immediately got into my modeling career here. And as soon as I entered my first photo shoot, it was connections after connections. I'm part of Fashion Week Brooklyn as a creative lead for the LGBTQ plus department. I'm featured in magazines. I've met other creatives like myself. It's just nonstop. And no one really cares who you are. You can be whatever you want out here. And I'm continuing to push and knock down those boundaries. I'm here to set a tone, and I'm here to just be completely open with questions and support. But it is hard. My workplace is modeling. So as soon as I step onto that runway, I hear people, the crowd, the audience, the judges. I hear them. Is that a woman? Is that a girl? Is that a boy? They don't know. They have no idea. So my image is the only thing that's expressing that. And it is a dangerous, just like Cassandra said, it's very dangerous being the person I want to be. But the only difference and change is being who I am. So I'm definitely going to keep pushing, and I just want to inspire and give hope, especially now. Pandemic is still continuing. So I just want to let everyone know that, I'm here, you're not alone. And I'm here for, any questions.
That's wonderful. Jay, thank you so much. Like I said, Mama Bear came out in me when I met Jay, and it was something where I could see the light. You know how you see the light in someone's eye and you just know that they can get there, but they're afraid. And that was the one thing. So Jay and I got a chance to kind of sit back after class and just talk. And sometimes as an ally, that's what you need. Just listen. I don't think we do enough of just listening, right? And allowing people the space to just share, because they're so afraid, right? What are you going to think of me? And I'm like, you're still fabulous. You're still a creative. You're still doing it. And Jay's kind of underplaying it. But I mean, he's walking in New York Fashion Week. Just think about that, right? From moving there with no money in his pockets, not knowing what he was going to do. He took a leap of faith. And I just want to tell you, Jay, I am so proud of you. I really am. Right? And this is because you're young, and that's the other thing. So many of us, I even think of myself coming into fashion, right? I did it so late in life because I was scared. What are they going to think? They're going to think I'm not intelligent, that I'm not, because I want to do this clothing thing, and I was so afraid. And once I relinquished myself of other people's opinions, then I was able to kind of walk in my light, walk on my own path. And that's the same for all that we have here. We want to hear from you. We've got some folks on the webinar today, and we've been kind of sharing the stories of our panelists, but I want to hear from you. So Dr. Scholar, Brent is going to put up in the chat a quick Mentimeter that I would love for you all to answer honestly, right? Honestly, openly, it's all anonymous, but we want to see what's sitting and resonating on your heart right now. So the question in the Mentimeter is, what assumptions do you have or had? I'll even put it in the past because some of us have kind of evolved, right? What assumptions do you have or have had about a transgender person? What assumptions do you have or had about a transgender person? So we'll have that link. I think Dr. Scholar has that. Yep, he's got it right there. So please answer that. And we'll build a nice word cloud and we'll be able to come to that and just kind of see what you're thinking. And again, remember in the Q&A section, you can type a question there. And if the panel's okay with it, as we move along, we will try to answer those questions so that everyone's voice can be heard. So we're gonna give that a couple of more, I think maybe another minute or so, Brent, yes, on the menu.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
I think actually, Joanna, let's let that go and let's go to our first question, if that's okay.
Wonderful, excellent. So our first focus area is going to be around the idea of acceptance, belonging.
I'm sorry, Joanna, I'm going to stop. I'm going to interrupt you. I'm saying our first question from our audience.
Okay, you ready for it?
Yeah.
Okay,
let's go with the first one.
Okay.
So this person says, thank you all for sharing. Wondering if the term trans is ever dropped after the individual transition. I'm just learning and I've connected with 1 in 10, and that's a wonderful resource.
Oh, very good question. I don't know the answer to that. So I will look to our panelists. Tell me your thoughts on this. So the question is, does the term trans ever drop after an individual transitions? Julian, do you know?
I think that is just as our transitions are custom fit for us and how we want to walk through it and what's comfortable for us. For me, I don't even disconnect myself from necessarily the lesbian community. My history is such a vital part of who I am. And I never, ever, we were in it together. We were pushed into these small places and thought of horribly. And we went through it together. Like it's part of what made me strong, I think. So I will never drop that or my connection with my history in any way. It's such a vital part of who I am. But people have their own.
Right, wonderful. Cassandra, what say you?
Well, it's really contingent upon what's going on. A lot of people ask me that very question, especially my Naval Academy classmates. They say, why do you call yourself a trans woman or a transgender woman? And I'll say, well, because you need to know, and you may have someone in your lives who needs to know that there's someone's out there who they can talk with. And others will go, well, what, you're just a woman physically in every way. Yeah, absolutely. And until someone hears my voice, they'll never know. They can't really look and tell that easily. So it's really contingent upon situation. If I'm doing research stuff, and I do a lot of stuff with research in this area now. So if someone sends me a survey, for instance, and they'll ask questions on there, what was your sex assigned at birth, and what's your gender identity, your sexual orientation, those kind of things, I'll answer those questions as a scientist interested in those kind of things. But if I don't want you to know, and if I don't think your questions are going to result in anything that's useful, or if you're trying to just nail someone or do something horrible, whatever, I'll tell you. And I said, nope, my birth record, my birth certificate says female, and it does. And that's all that they will hear. I mean, I won't tell them. I'll just say, look, I'm a woman. I've been on dates when guys didn't know, but I use the other voice. But anyway, I have a lot of fun, just so you know, but I use them interchangeably all the time.
Okay. Jay, what about you? I've heard you refer to yourself as a cis male before, and I don't know where we were at. We're talking about this. So what about you? Do you drop that trans? Is it important? What relevance does it have, especially in kind of the modeling space that you're in?
No, I haven't entirely dropped it. I feel like transgender, we do exist, and I definitely want to keep that present. We have always been around. This is nothing new. It's nothing like it just came out of nowhere. But I do consider myself male because that's who I am, so that's where my heart is. That's who I identify myself as. As far as modeling, transgender model, because I want people to know that, like I said, like we are existing people. We are people. We're human just like everyone else. And I really feel like trans is something very powerful, coming personally to me. we get to know both worlds, and this opens up a whole nother world for, you know, all of us human beings. So I would never drop the word trans. And just for everyone too, you know, we can be called whoever we want to be called, you know. I know a couple of trans men, they don't necessarily want to be called transgenders. They're just male or non-binary. So it just depends how you feel comfortable too. But yeah.
Right, but the key here is to ask. I just, you know, even that's why I love, Teresa, what Mayo's doing with those pronoun pins. I think that's wonderful. People always make an assumption. It's like, don't do that, ask, you know, and I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, this lets trans people know that they're in a safe space.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I think that is so powerful. That is really powerful. As we get to the Mentimeter, Brent, do we have the Mentimeter closed yet?
Yeah, we're ready to go with that. So.
Excellent. I would love to see what our audience thought. So we asked them the question about, you know, so there's the question there. What assumptions do you have about a transgender person? So we've got some, oh, interesting. We've got brave, we've got strong. Some people are saying aggressive, rejected, depressed. We've got sexual preference. They were born that way, that they were confused, trauma informed. That's interesting. And so we've got mistaken, fluid open. I see strength. I see bold. I see angry. I see sense of humor. I see trans people were confused, assuming pronouns, non-conforming. And I see trauma again, but I also see the word free, which is really wonderful. Emotionally intelligent. Interesting. So thank you so much. Just like to our panel for being open and vulnerable with their stories, I want to thank you for being open and vulnerable with your words as well. We receive them, and we'll be actually talking through some of these as we go through our questions. We've been talking about the notion of empathy, right? How do you, and I'll start with Teresa and Julian, this idea of acceptance and belonging and empathy, how do you create a culture, right, that is accepting? How do you create a culture that is embracing of all people and all gender identities? Like, so what does empathy actually look like? I would love to hear from the two of you.
Can I say one thing really quick?
Yeah, please, please.
What you just had on the screen, those assumptions people might have about trans people. It's part of a presentation actually that I do, and I've been doing it since 2006. What a vast change in those assumptions. Yeah. I was a sexual predator. I was a keep your kids away. I mean, all of these things. What a beautiful thing to see that has changed. And I think it's because Jay is out and open. Cassandra is out and open. We're giving people different examples of who we are. And I love that we can see it. We can see that change in things like this. I think it's important for us to see it. Yeah. So speaking on empathy, for me, I feel like that is the only way that we can bridge a gap between what people know now and they were informed by, and what the reality of who we are. I feel I have to open myself up and find ways to connect with them. And then that leaves an opening for them, and not to go in with assumptions about outcome. Just have a dialogue and try, if you can, to connect with that person on some level. I have connected with people who are in the Aryan Brotherhood, people who have had weight problems their whole life, and many more, but we connected on a level where we could be vulnerable and feel safe with each other.
Wonderful. Teresa, what about you?
So my way of showing empathy is by being 100% out and open about my support of Julian, and that I get to be the example of loving and accepting and proud to be that person. And I think that shows, if I'm the example, other people can see that and be like, oh, that's how you do it. This person can be out and open and accepting and loving of someone who is different. And like out about it and proud about it and free to talk about it with no hesitation, and that they can say, wow, if she can do that and be that way and it's okay, I can do that too.
That's powerful. That is really powerful, because that is, someone said that to me in a presentation I did on autism, right? They're like, man, you're like connected to a lot of communities. I am connected to people being treated equally. That is my fire, right? So it doesn't matter what the, you know, what the difference is. To me, I honor that. And I think that's the problem. You know, we don't honor those differences. And so, Teresa, I always hope that my you know, kind of passion for support and being an ally is infectious, right? And you go, man, like she is, you know, she is on fire for this community. Yes, we should all be on fire for supporting and protecting each other. So I love that. That's a great way to just talk through empathy. Cassandra, what about you? I would love to hear your perspective.
Empathy is really interesting. First, you have to find it within yourself to be empathetic toward yourself. That's the first thing. And that took me a long time. Now, once I realized that it took me, Julian, you said 16 years ago, when you transitioned 15, 16 years ago, I transitioned publicly only 6 years ago, but I'm 62 now. So I had to deal with a lot of internalized stigma, a lot of internalized issues that had come from my childhood and my familial environment when I grew, you know, where I grew up in Eastern Kentucky. People didn't accept people like us, period. And it became internalized to me. So I had to accept me. Once I did that, then it granted me time to be able to be empathetic towards others who were also having to struggle with acceptance of me. If it took me years to accept me, I have to be willing to accept the fact that it can take them time to accept me too. And that's the same problem. I've run into that with my mom. My mom, she and I talk every week, but she doesn't accept who I am, but we still talk. And we never told each other we loved each other growing up. I didn't have that environment growing up. That was not there. There was no expressed love, but now we do. And, you know, I have to be willing to grant my brothers and sisters, only one of 6 siblings will talk to me. And mostly the females out of my cousins will, but all the males have said, you need to die, most of them, literally. One told me to get a shotgun and blow my head off. But, you know, I have to be willing to forgive and let them come to terms with me too, so that they can get to where I am if they ever do. But I have to grant that grace. That's just the way I have to approach it.
That is such a powerful grace, right? Having it for ourselves, having it for each other, and also standing in a space that says, I am willing to admit that I don't know what I don't know. Some people just don't have context, right? Some people just don't have, you know, they haven't had the privilege of, you know, Cassandra and her fabulousness right now, because you are doing it with that hair. I love it, right? So they haven't had that privilege. And that's what I call it. For all of the differences that I get to interact with, what a privilege. I have grown tremendously as a human being, just being able to connect with them in very kind of honest ways. Jay, what about you? What does empathy look like, and how do we move closer to that? And at such a young age, you know, everybody's telling the age, I see you haven't done it, so I won't put you on the spot. But if you could just share, what does that look like for you?
Oh man, this is kind of similar to Cassandra. I feel like I'm still working on that too. I'm still growing. I'm still getting to know myself and my personal growth as well. And I feel like, you know, too, like you have to be able to accept who you are. And this takes time. This is not just a thing you just go overnight and just think it happens. You gotta, you know, you're still learning yourself. You still got to improve in certain areas. And once you're comfortable, you're able to accept others, you know, and being open to how they feel and the questions and curiosity, and also to judgment too. I have to make wiggle room for other people's, if it's friends, family, how they feel, if they're hurt, if they're upset, if they're mad. So I have to consider that, but also, you know, consider myself too. So it all starts from you first, then to others.
Right. Right. And that's something that, you know, and Julian, we kind of talked about that a little bit when we were kind of putting the panel together. You know, for a lot of the panelists, there have been times where they have shown bias, right? And it is something that, you know, it's a learning process. I was even telling Julian, and I say this to people all the time, I do this work of DEI, and even I, you know, sometimes have to pivot, right? Because it's a learning process. There's no end goal. It's not like, oh, I get it. And for every person you meet in the trans community, guess what? You've just met one person in the trans community, right? I tell this about every, you know, if you've met one person in the autism community, congratulations, you have now met one person in the autism community, because we are all different. There is this vastness, right? It's the same thing with people of color, right? It's like if you meet one Black male, one Black female, you have just met one Black male or one Black female. The intersectionalities that we all have. You know, look at Jay being in fashion, look at Cassandra being a business owner and a research assistant, look at, you know, Julian being in the medical. So there are so many intersectionalities that if we spent more time on those intersections, right, it could be so, you could get to know some amazing individuals that you will find you have more in common with than not. So I want to just, I want to move to, Brent, were we going to bring someone in live to ask a question, or do we want to
Not at this time.
the one that's using the Q&A?
Not
Okay,
at this time.
so
Let's keep going with your question.
Okay, sounds good, great. Keep adding your questions in there. We would love to answer them for you. As Julian has said, as Cassandra has said, as Teresa has said, as Jay has said, there are no questions that are off limit. This is what we are, an education organization and a safe space and safe place to ask difficult questions. So this is the place to do it. I want to move through and talk a little bit before we get to the next kind of Zoom poll that we're going to take. And I want to just share, if you all would just share very quickly, we can start with you, Julian. Has there ever been a time where you have othered someone or even shown your own biases towards someone else, whether it be another culture or race or religion? And would you just kind of share a little bit about that, and how did you pivot in that space?
The only thing that I can think of, I grew up in a very white environment without a lot of opportunity to meet people of different cultures, but my family was very liberal, and my mom started early with education about people that are different, and that's a very positive messages. So I was aware at a young age, but you know, I would imagine that I have done that throughout my life, but wasn't aware, which is what I think a lot of people do. Right. And then the person I potentially offended may not want to say anything to me. So the only thing that I can think of is my first friend who was Black was in my 20s. We were like the same person. We were so close. And she went to a restaurant in Phoenix with her girlfriend and came home. We were living together. And she said, man, Arizona is so racist. And I just kind of laughed. I've grown up here. What are you talking about? We're so much better. She said, no, they were like, I didn't believe her at first. Right. I didn't believe her because I grew up here and I see what I see. Well, we started having a conversation, and I knew her as someone I trusted, like myself. And when she was telling me these things, I couldn't help but believe her. So she opened my eyes, and I made assumptions before, you know what I mean? Like I don't know if that's othering, but not fully grasping humanity in a way I should have.
Right. Yeah, and that's actually, it's something that happens a lot, just so you know. It is negating someone's lived experience, you know, because you're like, oh, it happens to me all the time, right? So my partner is from England. And so until he met me 6 years ago, for him, it was like, really, this happens? Until he saw it happen, until we're at a bank and someone says, do you have a third piece of ID? And I'm like, what now? Why am I showing you 3 pieces of ID to cash a check? I mean, if the check was $1 million, perhaps, I mean, even then, but, and he would say, is this bank policy? And they're like, well, no, we just have to be safe, and we have to be, and he would say, I'm sorry, say that again? Right, you see the reaction, Julian? And until you, and like Teresa has probably experienced this, right? Until you observe the othering, until you see, and you're like, whoa, I can't believe that this just happened, but it happens all the time. And so that observation piece of it is very important. There's a question in the Q&A I want to read that I think is amazing. And I would love for us to just address it. So Cassandra, the question is, how do you handle, and this is for all the whole panel, how do you handle other people in the LGBTQ plus community who claim to be inclusive, but don't walk the walk when it comes to trans people? I have seen this personally. I will tell you, I've seen this, so I understand the question. So have you observed that, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I haven't experienced that personally, by the way. I do know that it happens. I do know that. I know that there are those within the community who do that. The trans radical feminist groups out there, the TRIFs they call them. So I've heard that has happened, but it has not happened personally to me. Everyone around me within the LGBT community, and I am connected to all of them within this area of Alabama. I haven't seen that. They've been very supportive. So I can't answer your question from personal experience.
Okay. Teresa, have you observed that at all? People in the LGBTQ, plus community not, saying they're inclusive, but I've seen this. I'll tell you the perspective I've seen it from. I've seen it from a race perspective, where those in the LGBTQ plus community have been racist towards people, of different religions, of different ethnicities, and it's been just jarring. I'm always like, wait, what? And I don't know how to react to it, you know what I mean? But I've seen it now a couple of times. So what do you think, Teresa?
Well, I remember when there was some litigation that had to do with non-discrimination. I don't know if it was in the workplace, and it did not include trans. LGBT, but not trans, or LGB, and not the T. And I remember that the transgender community was extremely upset about this.
HRC.
Was it HRC? Okay. And so there was a lot of discrimination going on that. And there was a lot of support for the legal changing of that to include that. And they did say that they wanted to get this passed and that they would include trans later, but that wasn't okay. Weren't okay with that. So we did have to reach out to our representatives and let them know that this wasn't okay.
Right. No, that's important. Yes, Cassandra, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I agree with Teresa on that part. I do see a lot of things that are legislatively or policy related in that regard. Where there is a separation between LGB and the T. Sometimes you'll see people say something like, hey, we're truly supportive of the lesbian, gays, bisexuals, stuff like that, or LGB. And then as an addendum, they'll add on transgender. That's happened a lot. I spent a lot of time talking in state houses about these kind of things to be more inclusive in that regard. But those are policy wonks trying to tell you that, hey, we have to get it this way to get it to go that way, to get it to go this way, to get to the next step. No. I understand that perspective.
So true. Jay, the question, if we could, and Teresa, I'll have you finish up and then I'll go to Jay. Please go ahead, Teresa.
Oh, so I was going to say, I think Julian can actually speak to that. When he was transitioning 16 years ago, that his lesbian community, he wasn't sure that they were going to be on board his transition. And I know that he did experience some of that. Now that is very different today. But do you remember feeling disconnected?
I do. Before I transitioned, I was a bodybuilder and I was not even identifying as trans, but I was physically transitioning. And I remember going to the bars that I grew up in these bars. I'm in my 30s now. And I could feel the vibe. They were not happy with how masculine I looked. I was making them look bad. And that's what we do in our communities. We stab each other because we think that somebody's making us look bad. Well, we're never going to make the other side happy. We have to make ourselves happy and support each other. That's how I feel. So I don't get involved in the politics stuff. It's not my area. I am most comfortable with individuals and or groups, and we just have dialogue. And that in and of itself is changing our culture, I think. We're giving them opportunities to see us for who we are.
Right.
And slowly that will change. Evolution takes a long time, and I'm patient. I understand my gay brothers and sisters don't get it because, again, Cassandra understands too. Jay, maybe to some level you're a lot younger, but we remember hating ourselves and thinking this was ridiculous or whatever we thought. I can empathize with those who feel that way. How could I not? I have. So it makes, it's just, politics, it makes my head hurt. I can't do that. There's so many of you that are better at that than me. Yeah.
No, that sounds good. Jay, the question we were asking, and so glad we got you back here. I know today, I don't know what is going on.
Yeah,
with
sorry about that.
No, welcome back. The question we were asking is, how do you handle other people in the LGBTQ plus community who are claiming to be inclusive, but don't walk the walk when it comes to trans people? So you're in the modeling world, right? Do you see that where, you know, they're saying, oh, we are so inclusive, but not really? You know, but and they're part of the community. I would love to hear your perspective because I know you've encountered that a little bit there in New York.
Yes, it's many times in all different perspectives too. So not just, you know, someone that says or they are in the community and they model, but also to the brand that I'm representing too. So the designer, I feel like they're just really trying to, you know, fit in or just have us as an image because it's a trend or, you know, it's the front face. So I'm always part of different, you know, situations like that. So when I am modeling, I try to make sure that, you know, I am 100% me from as soon as I get off to I get on at the ends. Like I try to just keep it super authentic. But I think too is just, you know, educating, you know, everyone about it because not everyone would really know like why they feel that way or how are they doing that. You know, you have to educate them. And I feel like, you know, for myself being a transgender model, I'm always having questions all the time, and I try to step in. Not, you know, I don't get into political stuff either. I try to stay off and back away from that, but I do want to make sure that, you know, we are existing people, and these are some facts coming from me and my own experiences too.
Absolutely. And as we talked about, you know, in the workplace, so for those of you that are representing companies, for those of you that are individuals that are working in organizations or community groups or even city entities or government, I want you to know that part of what makes this transition, especially within a workplace, easier is if you are able to ask questions. So even as you're serving as an ally or a co-conspirator, you can actually represent correctly, right? That's my always thing. I try to not make assumptions. I know a little, but I'm also a lifelong learner. So what I don't know, I'll read. You know, so I don't want you to say, oh, I've been to this one transgender in the workplace workshop. Now I know everything about, you know, it is a desire to know more. It is a desire to learn, you know, how to be supportive. And it's a lifelong journey. It is a lifelong journey that also requires you to ask questions. So the idea of asking questions, Brandon, if we could queue up this next poll, we want to ask you a question. So we've been talking about just ask questions. So what prevents you from asking questions? So to our audience, if you could just vote now. So what prevents you from asking a transgender person that you know in a social setting or in the workplace a question? So to our audience, are you worried about offending them? Are you afraid to ask them a question? Does your faith kind of prevent you from being able to ask them a question? Are you just not certain, right? You have no frame of reference for, you know, anyone in the trans community. Are there social rules or stigma that are coming into play for you? I would love if you all would answer the poll question for us so we get an idea. And you'll find that this resonates across those that are in BIPOC communities and other marginalized communities as well. So we want to just see, we'll give it just a few more seconds there. We've got Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, we've got offending them. Wow, that's the 83%. 83% right now is about offending people. And then we've got, uncertain, no frame of reference. I will tell you what I'm glad no one is afraid to ask, because that fear thing, I think, that's wonderful that no one feels afraid to ask. Excellent. So we've ended the poll. Thank you so much, Brent, for putting that up. And just looking at that, so offending them. So I'm going to shift a little bit, and I'm going to ask you all the question here. How can someone, Cassandra, we'll start with you. How can someone ask a question, right? And not offend you? Because I get that a lot. I get people like, I don't want to ask because I don't want to offend you. So what's one, if you could give one little tool, one little way that someone could ask it? I know humor is kind of, something that you have, but what would you say for those that are like, I don't want to offend you, but I am curious and I want to ask some questions? What say you?
Well, that's really a really good question. A really good way of approaching this. And my phone is ringing like crazy and shouldn't be. but I get that a lot, by the way. People will say, hey, I'm afraid to offend you, or afraid I'm going to say something that's going to hurt your feelings. I'm going to say, look, my feelings have nothing to do with this. They've been hurt plenty of times before. I've gotten over it. Don't worry about it. I am here. And my objective has always been to make it very clear that you can ask any question of me that you wish, as long as you're doing it with some respect, not just respect, but a sense of respecting the dignity of the person to whom you're talking. If you would ask your mother that question, you might be able to get away with it. That's one of the caveats, I guess. I mean, I make it a point of saying, look, I understand you may have some questions. I understand you may feel offended, or you may think that I'm going to be offended by things, but I want you to ask questions. I don't want you to hold those things in and assume something. So part of that overcoming it is my response to it. If we're looking at each other or we're having a conversation with each other, and I get the sense that you're wanting to ask me some other questions, then it's on me to open up to you, to tell you that, hey, it's all right to ask the question. Now, there are some of us who don't want to answer those questions. And it's probably not wise to continue any further than that. But for me personally, if you look at me and I'll, my goodness, I invite questions. My existence invites questions.
Wonderful. Okay, Jay, what about you? I'll go to you and then we'll end with Julian and Teresa. What about you? What if, how can people ask questions without offending you?
Well, this one's kind of difficult for me because I think just the current stage where I'm at of transitioning, I get a lot of people saying that they have no idea. So immediately I get approached as being a male. They have no clue. Now, if I was going to like pre-T stages, like my early months of transitioning, there was some like questions there. But like I said, I always stay true. When I introduce myself, I always say, hey, you can ask me anything. I'm here. So I think just being genuinely like open and interested, like just start like a nice conversation, and just let it take off from there. But I haven't had too many questions now this year, but it's been pretty easy for me this time.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Julian and Teresa, please.
Well, I've kind of made the world my stage. Like Sandra, I am so out, there's no retrieving it.
Right.
And I always make a point whenever I speak or have a chance to that I am open to any question.
Right.
And Mayo really like opened doors for me when they gave me a venue. I did a grand rounds, like PhDs, like real owners of those, not certificate guy. It's to do that, but what it did was, even if I say, or Teresa says, you can talk to him and ask him anything, it's a valuable place to be in because I work in the OR. There are so many questions I can answer because we're all friends. But if they think there's a 1% chance I might go to HR, they're not going to do it. And then all those other reasons. So I was allowed to stand at a podium and say, you guys can ask me any question you want, endorsed by Mayo. Now there's no barriers. HR is now out of the mix. I just stated publicly. So that's been very helpful. But I want to comment on something Jay said, that these stages of our transition. My first year of transition, there is no way I was getting up on that podium with a bunch of people I work with, talking about something that could make me so vulnerable. So I think it's super important, first and foremost, to honor where we are. Honor where we are, not feel guilty. I never want someone to feel guilty because they're not doing what I'm doing. I have been given a gift. This is a blessing to me and I love it. So I want all trans people to go at their own pace and do what they think is best for them. Honor yourself. We spent too many years not, you know.
Can I add something to that?
So Julian has always had that, please, I'd rather you ask than walk away with a question unanswered. And I support that 100%. And like I said in the beginning, people felt more comfortable asking me than him. And I would also let them know you can talk to him directly and nothing will be offended at all.
I told them they would get a prize. If you can offend me, seriously.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Such a beautiful sentiment because I hated myself. And I love who I am today. And it's through these dialogues and connections with other human beings. It's made me bold. So I want to talk about this to whoever wants to talk about it. I like that. It helps.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Cassandra, please. You were going to add something to the comment. Yes.
All right. So yeah, those things do happen. And yeah, I'm right there with Julian and Jay at this point is just, hey, look, I am who I am. Get over my darn voice. It's kind of incongruent. I get it. But hey, that gives me an opening to talk to you. For one is you see me and you think one thing and you hear me and you think something else. And I go, we have an opportunity to talk now. As an example of that, my daughter had asked me to come change a tire on her car a couple years back. And it was at a convenience store and the cashier comes running out there and she saw me. I'm in a dress, miniskirt, changing the tire on my daughter's car. And she said, she was asking me questions and all this. And I go, say, hi, how you doing? My name's Cassandra. So all this, she said, so what's wrong with your voice? I said, what do you mean? She said, what's wrong with your voice? And I said, well, there's nothing wrong with my voice. I just love it the way it is. I mean, what do you think? And I finally got to the place where she just kept asking me, she says, what's wrong with your voice? Because it didn't match what she saw. And I finally said, hey, look, I'm a transgender woman. And she goes, oh, I've got a friend like that. That's cool. And I go, okay.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, I want to just pause for a second because we have got some stellar questions and I want to make sure that I get a chance to ask these questions. And one is a great wrap-up question that we'll ask kind of last, which is the idea of tips for supporting trans colleagues at work. I think that's a wonderful one. But I want to go to the question where we have on here, where someone asked the question about what is the best way, right, to ask someone their pronouns without outing them? Because that is something you have to be very careful about, right? You don't know, what they have shared, what they haven't shared. And, if you're in a big organization, it is not your place to out someone. Like, you have to give them the space and the grace to be able to, share with themselves. So I'll start with Julian. What's the best way? What would you suggest, for someone that wants to ask pronouns because they're inquisitive and want to know more and they're an ally, but want to make sure they're not outing someone before, someone has the chance to kind of share that perspective of themselves. What do you think?
I have never been asked that question. I suppose if you watch, you would hear pronouns. I don't know. Like, I don't want to pretend like I know everything just because I am. Jay knows everything. I am so far behind. But for myself, I mean, I could have that situation too. There's been a couple times I've wondered if I'm with some brothers at work, but I don't know how to ask them. It's awkward and uncomfortable. So I think it's just best to watch and see how you interact with someone and kind of be informed by that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Get
Right.
a sense of a person before you jump in. Let's see where maybe they don't want to answer it. I don't know. Like, I just think we as a human beings need to pay more attention to each other.
Right.
You know what I mean, and get reads on that.
Right, that's true. And the second part the person mentions is, you know, they were told to use the pronouns they and them until they are instructed to do otherwise. So it's saying that that was a kinder approach as opposed to making an assumption. So Jay, what do you think? Is that a good approach? What do you think in terms of asking people's pronouns without outing them?
Ooh, I feel like coming from me, like we are in a generation where pronouns there's so many of them now. I'm kind of with Julian too. I approach trans men, trans women, all the time. And even if I don't know this person, I'm trying to figure out how should I approach them? Should I call them they first? Should I call them she? So I think like what he said, just pay attention, to them, see, how they're reacting, how conversations are, just the setting, but also be comfortable too, approaching and introducing yourself. Like you got to be comfortable too. Hey, my name is Jay. I'm transgender. This is how, my pronouns, and so forth. And that probably will open up the door a little bit more. Because I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to figure out pronouns. There's no right or wrong to it. It's just, knowing to accept others, how they react, and just kind of solving it from there too. So yeah, that's still something that I'm still working on myself.
Right, right. And I'm reading a comment here from Sarah. Hello, Sarah, good to see you. Like in this space, I'm not like physically seeing you, but talks about using names, right? That's something that, Sarah says, use the person's name versus pronouns. Lead with your own pronouns, yet don't require they identify. Observe and see if they do. So thank you, Sarah, for that. I really appreciate that. Cassandra, if you would wrap that up, and I'm going to ask my last question. And yes, hello to you as well, Sarah. So Cassandra, please.
I want to just reiterate what Sarah said. That's exactly the way I'd written down a note. The note said, use their name. And then Sarah wrote, use their name. That's exactly right, until you know otherwise. But there's another part to this too that I want to kind of, since this is a conversation with corporate leaders and business leaders, you set the environment as business leaders. Within your corporation. If you have policies in place that encourage your employees and staff members to put their pronouns after their name in their signature lines and emails and things like that, you set the pace. If you put that kind of thing as a policy in your corporation and policy in your small business and policy in your organization, whatever organization it might be, profit or nonprofit, if you set that policy, then what you're doing is you're giving people the freedom to show who they are, and you won't have to worry about that question. You won't have to worry about what pronouns to use. They'll have it there. And it will make it easier to do. For me personally, it's like, hey, I walk up to you and go, hey, my name's Cassandra. I go by she, her. Hey, what's your name and what are your pronouns? That's me.
Right. And that actually leads into one of the questions that we're asking, that was asked on here. And I'll combine a couple of those. And maybe Julian and Teresa, you can answer this from a healthcare within the workplace perspective, because that's a specific question on here and someone seconds that. But the general last overarching question I would love for us to, and you kind of started talking about that, Cassandra, which is, someone asked, what are your top 2 tips for supporting trans colleagues at work? So one, you said, Cassandra, I love that, make it part of the culture, right? So it starts from the leadership, making it part of the culture. And you can see that demonstrated. I happen to love Mayo for that. right? They have just taken some progressive approaches to how to really build that into the culture. So I would love to hear, and we'll start with Julian and then go to Teresa, and then Jay, and we'll end with Cassandra. So what are your top 2 tips? I'm sure we've got a lot for supporting trans colleagues at work. Julian.
Colleague to colleague or corporation to employee?
One of each.
Well, I have a long answer.
That's okay.
Actually, it's just really valuable. So I would like to share. I'm going to go with how can a corporation make me as a person from an underserved, misunderstood community feel safe and welcome. And I think it has to start with a reasonable process for us to be able to identify discrimination. If we feel that we are discriminated against, I, as a trans person in the first year of my transition, let's just say, I just want to go under the wire. I'm starting a new job. I have this thing about myself that maybe I'm not even fully comfortable with yet. And I am being I'm going to be paralyzed. I remember these things. I'm going to be paralyzed. So I think a great option is you have diversity groups because you're a progressive organization. I think it's a great way for someone in that group to do service work and be there for someone who is afraid. You are cultivating teamwork and togetherness within your organization. That is building a culture of diversity and acceptance. Secondly, we need to know who we actually go talk to. I want a person, because I don't want to out myself to 5 different people. It's daunting. And I think that we need to be represented in any sort of dialogue with HR involved and a person who may be discriminating. I think that we need to not feel alone. We need to feel safe. And if you don't have that in place, the rest of it's a moot point, as far as I'm concerned.
Excellent. Thank
It's
you.
a foundation, and we have to have a stable foundation, a reasonable foundation for us to feel safe with you.
Wonderful. Teresa.
To jump in on that, I would say the ideal situation would be that managers, human resource people, the higher ups in a corporation, they are the ones that need the diversity training, so that they are the ones that we know that or a trans person can go to and feel safe. So, you know, who would he go to if he didn't know? And he needs to know that his manager, his supervisor, his team lead, he needs to know that those people are safe. And the only way that those people are going to be safe is if they have been diversity trained. And so I think that the training doesn't necessarily have to go from the bottom up. It needs to come from the top down.
Well said.
The CEO of the organization,
That is such a
the
great point.
people that work under them, you know, the managers and supervisors, the people, the our HR resources, they are the ones that need to be trained so that that can come from the top down, and the ones that are working, that are transitioning, know that I can go to this person and they're going to support me. And I don't have to out myself to all my coworkers. I can just talk to this one person and know that they will have the support and the resources that they need.
And if you want to have an ever-evolving progressive program, you have to have a place where we can inform you as to how you're doing. And I want to be able to do that safely, and I want it to be a collaboration. I don't know corporate, but I know what it's like to be an employee here. Let's work together, man. I just think that's super important.
Right. And just so you know, in the chat, we've got a couple of people testifying with you. So I've got an amen in there. So you all are speaking that gospel truth. I love it. So Jay, let's go to you. And maybe if you don't have 2, if you just have one kind of tip for supporting trans colleagues in the work environment, you know, what do you suggest?
Yes, just coming from, you know, Julian's perspective, you know, just working in past experience in retail and just me in fashion now and on the runway, working in retail and working from being district and as an employee and associate, it definitely needs to start from top down for sure. My current full-time job, like I said, my story yesterday or the other day, someone was looking for me in the whole building to complete training. They were going by Justine, which is my legal name. And I was the last person to get notified. And I'm looking at this person like, okay, this person doesn't know. Like, my name is Jay. I go by Jay, but that's my legal name. You know, it needs to be set as preferred name. So when you know, employees are hired or working, they should be able to insert preferred name or, you know, some type of pronoun to identify someone in HR that's looking for me. So I definitely think that's very important, instead of just, you know, letting everyone, you know, your business throughout work, like, and feel uncomfortable and vulnerable. Like, that's not who I am. This is what I like to be called. As far as coming from districts, I worked in a retailer where I worked with very young people, 16 and up. So this, you know, they're the future generation. This is where the LGBTQ this is where it's at. Yes. So me knowing from being from the bottom up, I know how to approach my associates because they are 16. I watch them move, how they talk, how they like to be called. And that taught me a lot of knowing how to approach people. So if you know how to set, you know, a comfortable setting, and it starts all from the culture, from your work culture. If you're supporting the, you know, the pride flag, LGBT, you know, donation, some type of program, more people will come, whether if they're transgender, lesbian, gay, or someone that's straight that is dealing with, you know, siblings, cousins, someone in the family that is, you know, transitioning, they'll come and work. So like you said, just setting a safe place, a culture in the work and starting from top down would really, like, it shows love, and it shows, like, you know, more people are more involved and comfortable. So I'm all hands down for that one for sure.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Cassandra, did you want to add a comment that you haven't heard yet in our panelists as we close out here? Would love to hear from you.
Let me see, a comment I haven't heard yet. I think Julian and Teresa and Jay covered this thing so well. Oh my gosh, they covered it really well. I will reiterate a couple of things though, if you don't mind. One is, if your organization is involved in the community, put a table up at the LGBT Pride events. Go do something like that. Be involved with them, support them, show them. And if you have offices within your buildings or anything like that, do stuff like this too. Look, it's the little things that we notice right off the bat. We walk into your office space, and if there's one of these things just laying around on your table, guess what? We see it. Yeah. We know. And if your HR department, if you don't have LGBT supportive people within your HR department, managers and leaders in that team, we'll know that too. If your HR people send out emails and they don't have their pronouns listed, we're less likely to talk to them openly about who we are. They need to be brought on board fast and quickly, because they set the tone for your corporation, your business, your organization. We walk in that door, we see little things, we're more willing to be open about who we are. And we know that we're safe.
That's wonderful. That is so wonderful. Thank you all for your openness, for your transparency, for your vulnerability, for sharing yourselves with us this morning. I want you to know that I do not take that for granted. I am honored to share this space with you this morning. It helps me grow. It's helping all of us grow. And it's a conversation that I invite all of you that are on today's webinar and those that will be watching it later on to just have an active approach, right, to being a co-conspirator, to being an ally. This is not a passive thing, right? You don't sit by as someone who waits to invite you to, be an ally for them. It takes a little bit of bravery. It takes a chance to really kind of put yourself out there a little bit, because as you've heard from the stories today, I wanted to humanize it. As you've heard from the stories today, these are wonderful human beings that you ought to want to get to know, because your life could be that much richer. So I am grateful for all of you, to Julian Melson and Teresa Melson joining us from Mayo Clinic. Thank you very much. To Cassandra Williamson joining us from Alabama. Thank you very much. To Jay, thank you very much, joining us from New York City. I am so in love with just your journey, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of it. I want to just really quickly, while I have you all up here, this work that we do is so important, but none of it, and I mean absolutely none of it, can happen without our sponsors, And we are so grateful for the important contributions of our sponsors, not just our sponsors, but our volunteers, right? We've got our board of directors, and I would just like to recognize them very quickly as we move through here. Our amazing DLA board of directors, they are really responsible for guiding this conversation and guiding this organization and the leadership. So we have got some amazing board members that really kind of help. Thank you so much to drive the conversation. As you can see here, they represent organizations like Wells Fargo and our friends over at Salt River Project, our wonderful friends at the Mayo Clinic. You all are tremendous sponsors for us, and also University of Arizona College of Medicine. And just so it just goes on, and it is a wonderful place to be, to know that you've got support from people like University of Phoenix. So we are thankful and grateful to all of you. Thank you to our DLA Education Committee. They are responsible for a lot of the planning that you see in these monthly workshops. And a very special thank you to Dr. Brent Scholar. I know he is moving so many pieces in the background, and of course we've had just these tremendous people. I just want to say, if she's on the call, I know Miss Betty Thompson is retiring, and she has been a longtime DLA volunteer. Betty, we love you, we honor you, and thank you for your service to DLA, and thank you for the service to the DEI community in general. So thank you all for that, for our education committee. The sponsors that I mentioned there, one of our big sponsors is Tegna Foundation, which is Channel 12. And they have been really supportive of this programming that you see now. And we received their 2021 programming grant. So a special thank you to the Tegna Foundation, Channel 12, and their general manager, who is also on the DLA board, Ms. Kate Morris, and our community rep there at Channel 12, Carrie Watts, who is an absolute delight to work with. And they have just been so tremendous in our growth and being able to bring you this kind of programming. Also, I mentioned to Mayo Clinic, we received their Everybody In Fund grant. And that grant is also what supports this Uncomfortable Dialogue series. And last but certainly not least, to our friends at the Black Philanthropy Initiative. The Black Philanthropy Initiative was the ones that gave us this wonderful grant, again, to support this. A special thank you to my friend, Ms. Kim Covington with the Arizona Community Foundation. It has been wonderful to bring you these important dialogues and to offer it in such a safe space and place. But the dialogues don't end with just these monthly workshops. We've got even more for you coming up with our annual conference. So I know we've got some award recipients. I don't know, Brent, if you got a chance to talk about that, but I would love if you would talk about our upcoming important deadline for our Inclusion Awards for conference.
Sure. Thank you very much, Joanna. Yeah, we talked about it a little bit earlier with Reed. So remember, we do have our conference coming up in November. It's looking to be November 17th, 18th, and 19th. And we're looking for award nominations. So our deadline is September 27th. Uh-oh. That's like this weekend, folks. We need your nominations. We know there are great people out there that are doing the work. So we have our diversity leader and our diversity youth leader, which is anybody under 30, by the way. So please nominate them, as well as our inclusive workplace. And we have small, medium, and large for those. And we also have our inclusive nonprofit organization. So please nominate today. Go to www.diversityleadershipalliance.org, Upslope Awards. Go to the award page. There's a nominate button there. Make sure you also go and register for the conference. We want you there. So please join us. Also, we want to make sure that you join us for October 14th for our next offering before the conference. So we are going to be talking about sustainable Indigenous practices. We've got some great people lined up. It's on that Thursday, 9 to 11. You'll find it on our website. We'll find the link on our Facebook page as well. So please look there for your registration. Finally, I would also like to direct you when you go to our website, if you have enjoyed today's workshop and our content throughout this year, please consider supporting DLA further by making a $20 donation in honor of our 20th anniversary year. Yes, we have great sponsors that are Mayo Clinic is one of them, and Joanna has gone through a whole bunch of others. But if you enjoy this and you would like to give, please consider doing that. And there's a button on our website for that as well. Please note that all contributions may be tax deductible. Please talk to your tax accountant for that. And a very special thank you to all of you, to Mike Rose, Heather Ivy, and Dave Wollenhamp for their American Sign Language. We greatly appreciate them to help us make this a more inclusive time. Joanna?
Absolutely. Thank you to, again, Julian Melson and Teresa Melson, Cassandra Williamson, and also to Jay Wilkinson for joining us from New York. We are humbled by your contribution. We are grateful for your stories, and thank you for being part of the dialogue series. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. We do not for one instance take your time for granted. We all know that it's the one commodity none of us have enough of, right? So again, thank you so much. And do me a favor, okay? Take care of yourself. And most importantly, take care of each other. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us for Uncomfortable Conversations that Ignite Change. Cheers. Bye-bye.